Hi everybody, my name is Vickers and I'm a portrait and wedding photographer based in Vienna, Austria. I started taking photos a long time ago, and I started by just taking photos of whatever was in front of my lens and whatever I could take photos of, which is, I think, how most people start. Um, and so today I thought it would be fun to look at photos I took 4 years ago and on a trip to Beijing and look at them and critique them and see if I still like them and what I like about them, what's wrong with them, what's good about them. So all of the photos that I'm going to show you are going to be black and white photos, and they were all taken on my point and shoot camera, my trusty Sony RX100. I normally work with Nikon for my professional work, but for traveling, it's really great to have a small camera with me because it's very light. It fits into my purse. It doesn't make me look like a rich tourist who wants to be robbed. So I very much like that, and it does take decent photos. So let's jump into the critiquing bit. So the first photo here was taken in Vienna airport. Just, because I was waiting and I was bored. I kind of like the composition here. I kind of like the two lines and the squares of the lights up there, but I don't think it has much artistic merit. I think it's a bit too dark. I think a lot of the photos I have taken on this trip came out a bit too dark, but I'll talk about that later. Yeah, it's not bad, but it doesn't really speak to me on an artistic level. Maybe a wider angle would have been better, or maybe a bit of a different crop here would be cool. Keep in mind, I have not edited these photos again. This is the original edit from 4 years ago. I haven't changed a thing about them, not done any more retouching or cropping or anything. So, um, because I wanted this to be authentic. So yeah, I don't think this tells you much. Street photography, I mean, a lot of the photos you'll see are going to be street photography, of course, because I was walking around on the streets of Beijing, and just taking photos of whatever I saw. And good street photography tells a story, right? So maybe if there were people standing up there under these lights looking down, that would have been cooler, something like that. But this doesn't tell a story at all. The next one, I mean, I know I can see where I was going with this and I don't hate it, but I think it's way too dark. I think it should be much, much brighter and also probably wider. The black and white kind of works. I like the lights here and the shadows they cast. And of course, the point of this photo was to see the reflections of the people and the gate number and stuff in the glass. So it's not horrible, but it's also not very good. Composition wise, there are a lot of things that could have been done better. Maybe again, a wider angle, maybe a vertical instead of horizontal shot would have worked better. But I can remember it was quite crowded, so I didn't really have anywhere to go there. So this was kind of the only shot I could take. And well, like I said, I don't hate it, but it's really nothing to write home about either. So now we've arrived at the airport in Beijing, and I was taking photos of the structure of the airport and the roof and stuff. So this first photo is from the roof, or well, underneath the roof, of course, but it's a photo of the roof. I don't like it. I don't think it does anything artistically. I think there is really no good composition here. There's nothing interesting, no interesting story. This one is better, the second one here from off the roof, because it's got a bit of reflection in the floor and the composition is a bit more interesting, but I think it's too many things on the same at the same time, so you don't really know where to look. There is no focus, no, like, not one important bit of the image, so I'm not too sure about this. And also that the big beam is kind of right in the middle of the photo, so the composition isn't too awesome. If you want to learn a little bit more about composition in general, do check out my other video, or the first video in this series that I uploaded about composition and rule of thirds. I will link it down below if you're interested. Please go check it out. I will go deeper into composition there. Right, so I'm walking around outside my hostel on the streets, and I see this guy smoking. I can remember I really liked the way the light hit the smoke, and I still like that aspect, and also how he's getting a little bit of a halo around himself, almost because of the way the light hits him. At that point in my photography, I was just starting to really see the light and see where it comes from and what it hits. So I think for the development of my photography, this trip has been very good. But if I were to like showcase my portfolio today, I would not include that shot for quite a few reasons. I know where I was going there. Again, I wanted to tell a little bit of a story there, but it's not very clear what what I want to say with this. It's kind of a random shot into the crowd. It is not terrible either. Composition is okay, but yeah, I think there's too many people in the background that kind of take away from the guy, and it's a bit hard to find out where to look. But I was just walking around and trying to see interesting stuff, and that's kind of how you develop your street photography in general. You just walk around and see if you can find something interesting. And I did find something interesting. A lot of the photos that I'll show you will showcase soldiers or police, because they are very omnipresent in Beijing. This photo here, well, I like the different lines from the poles and the umbrella and the guy standing there kind of also kind of following these lines, and the repetition that you have off to the left. I don't mind that too much, but I think, again, this is too crowded. There's too much going on. It's too dark as well. The editing is too dark. The vignette, that black shadow that you see around the photo, it's called a vignette, is too much here. And again, for a portfolio, I would not include that because it's just not where I would want it to be artistically. This one here of the bridge, well, I could have probably taken away these little specks of dust or dirt or whatever it is that you see on the shadow underneath the bridge, and this was probably my first try at some kind of Instagram-y shot. Doesn't really work, I think, because you don't see the top of the bridge. I remember that I took a photo that didn't quite work, and I tried to make it work by cropping it. Didn't quite work. It's, again, not absolutely terrible. What would make this photo good would be maybe a duck or something floating on the river underneath the bridge, or if you could see some fish or something interesting, or maybe even a person standing on the bridge looking down, something like this. Again, something that tells a story. This does definitely not tell a story, and it's not interesting perspective either. So this is a nice landscape shot. I personally don't mind the composition at all. I think the horizon is placed all right. It's maybe a little too central. Maybe I could have lowered the camera down and have a little more water, or lifted it up a little bit, have a little more sky, depending. But yeah, it's just like, so this is what this lake looks like. Yeah, pretty much. Again, not much storytelling here. Yeah, I don't think any of the photos that I'm gonna show you are outright absolutely horrible, terrible, no good, because I did like them at the time, and I probably wouldn't show you something that I'm absolutely ashamed of. But this isn't awesome. It's a nice photo, I think, for like if you were to, I don't know, make a book about some aspects of Chinese culture or something, maybe that would be a nice photo to include, or a travel guide on Beijing, something like this. But it doesn't have a statement. There's no funny aspect, no cool aspect to it. It's not bad, but it's not awesome either. This one here, I really like the way it's shot, because I remember crouching down so I could get these bendy edges of the roof. And I think that works very well with this perspective. It's kind of a little bit of a wide angle shot. I remember I had a tiny little bit of an exhibition, if you want to call it that, in a cafe. And I used that as the kind of flyer photo for it, because I did like it, and I think it's still a nice photo. Something like that you would probably today encounter all over Instagram. And maybe that would have been best kept in color. But yeah, the perspective makes this photo, and the way the light hits the left side of the building and not the other side, because I think that was just around sunset. So I very much like that aspect as well. Here, this is, well, just an alley leading up to a temple. Don't know why I thought this had to be in black and white. It somehow did. Not really anything interesting there. I do like this shot here. I do like the repetition that we see in these pillars, or whatever you want to call them. And I like the lines, the repetition of the lines, the kind of diagonal lines here. I'm a big fan of lines, leading lines, that kind of thing. Here, maybe to make it better, I could have taken a wider shot, but then maybe there would have been a lot of stuff in the background as well. So yeah, it's pretty nice. The composition isn't awful. It's not 100% perfect. Like I said, keep in mind this was 4 years ago. This was when I just learned about how to see the light and how to compose a photo. So a lot of the photos here will be a little off, but that's kind of the point of this video anyway. This is a really nice street scene. Again, wonderful light on the cars. Wonderful light on the ground. I remember very much liking this photo when I shot it. I'm like, oh yeah, awesome light. The light all the time on that trip was really great. So I was very lucky. Didn't have one bad day. And yeah, again, this is a good illustration of the traffic situation in Beijing, I suppose, with the guy on the bike there and things. But it also doesn't make a point. It's not telling any kind of story. But this one here is, I really like that photo, because you can tell a story with this. This is a little boy practicing his bike riding skills, and if I remember correctly, I titled this "Practice Makes Perfect." So yeah, that's true for a lot of aspects of life, I would say. I like this, still like it a lot, because I like the way the shadow is falling. It would be awesome if the shadow were a little bit darker here, I think, so you can see it better. Again, this was evening light. Composition wise, it's almost good. I think if I had kind of moved the camera a little more to the left, maybe, so he's a little off the center, that would have been probably better. I like the lines of the pavement kind of leading diagonally through the image, so that's not bad. I think it's a cute shot still. Compositionally not perfect, but it does tell a story, and at the end of the day, that is probably what's going to make the most impact. If you shoot a photo that is technically not absolutely perfect, but it tells the most beautiful story, then that is going to win over the technical part. Keep in mind that I am not an experienced street photographer, and if I'm doing stuff wrong, and if I'm telling lies here, please do tell me in the comments. I would very much appreciate that, but this is just the way I see things. this here, I love this shot. I love the fact that, I mean, I have to tell you a little bit about this photo. It's not just some one random weird guy sitting in his pajamas. I don't know really about today's China. I don't think it's that popular anymore, but in 2014, wearing pajamas on the street and while working, even in the shops, was kind of popular, kind of like a fashion statement that basically says, "Hey, I have free time. I don't have to work, so I'm allowed. I can run around in my pajamas." Um, so that was not a one-off. I saw a lot of people in pajamas. But what I like about this photo is the juxtaposition of the guy in the pajama and the lady very busy on her phone in the background. And I like that it is kind of separated, like just along the knee of pajama guy. You have this guy dressed in dark, so that kind of separates the image in two halves in a way. Maybe it would have been better if I swerved the camera a little bit to the right to see more of the people and less of the guy, or less of the door behind him. But this is a good storytelling image. Compositionally, maybe not the best, but it's getting there, I would say. The next photo is of Beijing's Olympic Stadium. It's called the Bird's Nest Stadium. Here I just wanted to capture the architecture and the cool structure of this building. I remember this was my Facebook header photo for a while, I think, because I liked it so much. Here, of course, the roof or the horizon is kind of really smack dab in the middle of the photo, which is not the best thing. But I still like it. I like the way the light is hitting the edge here. Vignette again is too much. That black shadow around it, definitely way too much. I should have feathered that out more. You can do that in Lightroom. You have settings, or even should have probably not put it on at all, because vignettes are sometimes a bit silly. Right, moving on. I love this one. I love this photo. I did not put these guys that way. They were standing in line like this. So tallest one to the left, shortest one to the right, kind of. So I really, really like that. All of them except for the guy on the right have their water bottle. Guy on the left is waving to me. I love this because of the grouping here. Background, I suppose, could have been better, but this tells a story. This is how policemen in China or in Beijing look like. They're all, this kind of ill-fitting uniform, and they all look so friendly. They're all smiling at me. They were all very happy that I was taking their photo. And actually, after I took that photo, the guy on the left waved to me and said, hey, let me take a photo with you. And of course, he took a selfie on his phone with me. And that was very sweet. So, I can tell a story about this image, and it does tell a story. So I like this a lot. Also, yeah, the way they're standing is just perfect. They're just aligned like that, as if I had placed them like that. This one, again, it's a travel shot, I would suppose. The composition is okay. I like on the left, I like that one big line leading up to the bridge, and the lines in the pavement next to it. I'm just trying to think if it's a little too nervous or not. Maybe without that person standing by the bridge on the pavement there to the left. Maybe without that person it would have been better, definitely. Maybe a slightly different angle, a little bit more to the left, would have probably been ideal here. But yeah, I don't hate it. It's not bad. But again, it's an illustrative shot of, like, this is how this temple or whatever, I think it was some kind of a residence. I can't remember where exactly it was. So some kind of palace maybe. So yeah, this is what it looks like pretty much. But again, no storytelling here. As opposed to this one, where you have people sleeping in the park. And everybody has their little one little bench to them. And yeah, there's pairs of twos. I love this. I love that you have one guy in the front with his shoes on the floor, one guy in the middle, shoes on the floor. I really like that. I probably should have, what I should have probably done was take 1-2 steps to the left and then kind of turn a little bit towards them so I could get them more in line with the trees, and have a little bit better kind of, yeah, division of the photo, because right now on the right side we have this tree trunk in there that's kind of distracting and it kind of throwing the composition off a little bit, so that would have probably been better. Still, this tells a story. I still like it. I saw quite a few people napping on the streets, and I have to say that in China in general, as far as I have experienced it, I've lived there for half a year, is a very, very safe place. So they're not actually putting themselves at risk by sleeping on the bench, and they're also not homeless. They're just taking a nap. Right, so this photo, meh. Yeah, I thought the lines would be cool. I thought it would be cool to see these ancient old roof tiles and the modern house in the back. Problem is that the lines didn't really line up with each other. Maybe I could have lowered the camera and have just the tiles and like a little bit of the top of the windows that you see out there. Or maybe, yeah, just kind of ignored that photo because the roof isn't straight. The top of that roof isn't straight, or it isn't aligning with the other roof with that. I think it was just a wall. It's not a building. It's just a wall, and there's this modern building behind it. So it doesn't quite work. Yeah, I should have. Ideally, I should have probably climbed on a ladder and take a photo of the windows behind that wall. And the roof tiles. That would have probably been better, but alas, I did not have a ladder, so there we are. Here, I very much like the motion blur. I very much like that the background with this cute little doll, and it says civilized Chaoyang. Chaoyang is a area in Beijing, like a district. I like that this is in focus and sharp, and that's kind of the first place you look, and then you have the soldiers crossing in front. I like the motion blur on their feet and hands, arms, and this does tell a story, as in how is this civilized state achieved? Is this state control, or this is, you can kind of make a political statement out of this, or yeah, it definitely does tell a story here. From the composition and things, I think it's a little too nervous. There's a little too much going on, and yeah, maybe it's also a little too dark, but yeah, I still do like it, and it, as a kind of documentary image, it definitely has its merits, and you can definitely see something about China and about Beijing that isn't just like, hey, here's this pretty temple. So this does tell a story and can definitely make a statement, I would say. Well, here, yeah, I like the lines, I suppose. Doesn't really do it for me anymore. I was just really baffled by all the beautiful architecture, and the old and new beautiful architecture, and these modern buildings with all the glass and steel and whatever. I really liked them, so I took as many photos as I could of them. Again, we do have nice light here, but it's maybe the crop is a bit too tight. It doesn't really tell a story. Again, if there were a bird flying in front of that, much better. If there were a pigeon sitting on one of these pole things, much better. anything. I don't know I don't even know if these are windows. If that was a window and somebody were looking out of it or whatever, that would have been cool. But alas, it isn't happening. Here again, nice illustrative shot. Would probably look good in some kind of travel magazine in color then though, because I think it looks a bit drab and sad in black and white, to be honest, actually. To make this a good storytelling street photography image, we would need something in the foreground, maybe somebody paddling a boat or something, or zooming in closer, seeing people on the bridge, something like that. As far as I'm concerned now, it's a nice landscape image. I like the reflections in the water, definitely, and I like the composition. It's I would probably, yeah, maybe I would have ideally should have gone a little bit more to which side is that? Well, one of the sides, and try to place the bridge completely in the middle, so you have the leading lines of the forest or trees and the reflection of them kind of leading straight up to it in the middle. But that's not a deal breaker. I think I still like that quite a bit. Here we have some Beijing youth practicing their guitars, which I thought was really nice and kind of an endearing image. But apart from that, I think there's too much going on there. Didn't really isolate the guys too much. I mean, you can't, because it's just street photography, and street photography by definition isn't posed, so I couldn't, just ask them to come forward and sit there or something, and that was not the point. I wanted to document the way they really looked. And so this is not quite isolated enough. Maybe if I had gone completely to the left and taken a photo of them kind of, and with the walls of the buildings behind them, so you can see the street next to them, that probably would have been a lot better and a lot more interesting. Also, regarding the light, would have probably been better. Right, this one I really like. I like the repetition of 2 and 2. You've got the two people sitting in the shade in the foreground and the two soldiers patrolling. This is at the Tiananmen Square, or very close to the Tiananmen Square anyway. So there's lots and lots of soldiers around, so I wanted to document that. And also we've got the two trash cans in the back that are also two, so that's quite nice, it's quite funny. I love the line of the shadow in the foreground and the line of the fence that is dividing the image in the background. Yeah, I think this one is a really good shot. I really, really like this, and this does tell a story, and it's quite cool. And so does this. We've got these two soldiers walking around and being reflected in the puddle. Some people were cleaning the street here. It hadn't actually been raining. People were just throwing water on the street to clean it. This is quite a touristy area, so there's lots of people coming through and lots of restaurants there, so they were just cleaning the streets in front of them. The things I like about this image, like I said, is the reflection of the soldiers in the water, the reflection of these lamps next to them on the ground, or the shadows of them, because that divides the image. I like the lines of the buildings that just kind of converge in the middle, if that's the right word. And the way kind of the horizon and the sky also reflects, of course, in the water. Maybe there's a little bit too much going on in the background. Maybe there's a little too many people and things. But I don't find it awful. I quite like this one. The only thing that I would change if I could would be the reflection of the guy on the left. It doesn't have a head, and the right guy has kind of half of his head cut off in the puddle. I wish I could change that. I couldn't. This is kind of almost straight out of camera. This one here was at sunset at Tiananmen Square. I love that the guy is standing just as straight as this big floodlight lamp thing behind him. I like the horizon. The composition is pretty good. And it is also quite storytelling. I love the way the light hits the ground here. It's the pavement, because the sun is just like setting just there. And yeah, so I quite like this photo. I'm not too keen on all these people in the background, but that just couldn't be helped. It's just so crowded everywhere in the city. Right, and the last photo that I'll show you is these two ladies sitting somewhere and having a little chat in the evening. I found this image to be really endearing and very cute. But yeah, it does tell a little bit of a story, I would say. The composition is okay-ish. Maybe it would be better if I had gone a little more to the left, taken a little bit of a wider crop. I don't know how many of these pylons, these big white blocks that you see in the background were there, but maybe it would have been cool if I had like a lot more repetition there. Again, I don't hate it, but it's not something that I would be like, oh my god, this is the best photo I've ever taken. So yeah, this has been a bit of a long video, but I hope you learned a little bit from it. And if you're interested in learning more, please do subscribe to my channel. I would very much like for you to follow me and see more of my videos. I'm going to upload more of those. So yeah. Thank you very much for sticking with me for half an hour. I hope it was worth your time, and I'll see you next time. Bye.